we can straighten out management issues within,
Yeah.
2 to 3 months, and we can then start generating cash flow much sooner than if we have to go in and do a renovation that is to take 6 to 12 months before we're able to turn that around and start having cash flow on those.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Dr. Alan Lomax. Dr. Lomax is a seasonal investor with a Ph.D. in organizational systems psychology and over 3 decades of experience guiding personal and organizational growth, inspiring dynamic professionals to passionately engage in the work of their calling while simultaneously securing their financial well-being. Stop trading time and energy for your livelihood. Alan has created a unique blueprint that puts your money to work for your livelihood and frees you to engage in your passion. While experiencing tremendous personal fulfillment in academia, he secured his financial well-being through passive real estate investing, allowing him to thrive financially while still making meaningful contributions in his field. After losing everything due to the financial crisis, Alan devised a resilient success strategy and is back, financially stronger than ever and flourishing in all areas of life. As founder of the Streams to Impact Prosperity Program and the Streams to Impact podcast, he passionately empowers professionals to engage in their calling, make the galactic impact they dream of making, and build their wealth. Today, Dr. Lomax is going to share more of his story and what he's got going on today. Alan, welcome to the show.
Well, it's great to be here, Chris.
Yes.
Been a long time since we've been together. It's great to be back with you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I know you've had a lot going on, and man, the landscape in real estate has changed, so much over, the past few years since, kind of the heart of COVID, and we're coming kind of out of that, but we've seen the real estate cycle kind of shift a couple times.
Mhm.
As we record this, we're about a week out after the Fed just announced a 50 basis point rate cut,
Mhm.
which a lot of people find positive. So I'd love to talk about all those things, but before we do, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background and what you have going on.
Well, thank you. Chris. So I don't know where to start. I mean, I started my company, Steve Tucker Capital, and um, uh, inspired really because of having to overcome significant challenges throughout my growth and development processes.
Yeah.
And my initial goal was, I think, like many of us, was I wanted to develop wealth, and I soon realized that that's really kind of an empty, uh, meaningless kind of endeavor.
Mm.
And I began to realize that there's probably a lot of people like me in professions like I'm in who have really essentially have a comfortable income and have really, in a lot of ways, just become complacent with that income and forget about the fact that, someday we probably do want to retire and want
Yeah.
to have a significant income to continue with that, and we don't think about those times. So I really changed my focus from just developing my own wealth to looking to develop opportunities for others to develop their wealth, uh, to stop exchanging their time, effort, and energy for a livelihood, and to do that uh, by developing multiple streams of income, primarily built upon passive commercial real estate investments.
Yeah.
And if I can take just a moment to just
Yeah.
share about my story,
Absolutely.
I one of the more significant things that ever happened to me was when I was in the seventh grade. My family and I were sitting around a black and white television, and all of us were sitting around the same screen. So all of that dates me considerably. But on the show came this special about homosexuality, and this was the first time I had really ever heard that word. And as they were interviewing the individuals, they had their faces smudged and their
Mm.
identities concealed, and it was a pretty bleak introduction to the concept of homosexuality. But I realized instantaneously that was me, and
Hmm.
it was not a pleasant realization. It was more like a ton being buried in a ton
Hmm.
of bricks, and from that uh, proceeded many years of depression on top
Hmm.
of discovering that it was homosexuality, and I mean having absolutely no place, nobody to talk about that issue.
Yeah.
Um, and then on top of that, I was also undiagnosed dyslexia. There just was no such diagnoses in those days, and so
Wow.
I had been labeled since my grade school years uh, as a slow learner, not very bright, and so
Wow.
going through these things, eventually I did graduate from high school. A college that admitted me and lacklusterly made it through college and got my degree. And for many years, just held down many different lackluster jobs and and went really nowhere in life. And even got married to conform to social standards.
Wow.
After many of those years, my wife, who had more insight than I did, ended the marriage, and this was really my rock bottom moment. I went into counseling for the first time, and it was like a light switch. The uh, My life prior to that and after that has been a total different trajectory.
Wow.
Um, I I went back to school, got my graduate degree in counseling, secured a university uh, position, and completed my PhD, and found tremendous fulfillment in really what I called the work of my calling. And with stability in my life, I then began to invest in real estate and began, like many of us do, in the single family space, and was doing quite well until 2008. And the crash hit. So, I lost my job that I loved dearly, and a significant portion of my wealth that had been developed was suddenly gone. And a very dark time, a lot of reconsideration on where to go, and that's when I really discovered commercial real estate and realized that not only is that much more scalable than single family will ever be, but it's also a much more stable investment. And the other thing about commercial real estate is you don't have to go it alone. And so I've
Yeah.
been involved with professionals who have excellent track records, uh, and so by associating with them, not only is commercial real estate itself a much more stable a product than single family, it's much less risky. Being involved with professionals who have track records has mitigated my risk substantially. And
Yeah.
so that has been my journey, and kind of a full cycle journey there. And I spend my time and effort and energy now investing or helping other people to invest in
Yeah.
passive real estate endeavors.
Wow.
So,
That that's first off, thank you very much for sharing, really, fairly in depth, some of your story, Alan. And we got several things that I'd love to kind of pull out of that and kind of go through. I was listening to your experience, and mine is different, but I lost my best friend when I was young. I lost my father when I was young too.
mm,
And, I went to counseling for that to when I was 25 to kind of help me out of that. And I look back at my life, a lot of people, you and I were talking earlier. I just actually faced another very tragic loss of my sister here recently. And, I've had people reach out and talk about that. And, one of the things, fortunately, is that going through some of these prior challenges has given me actually, I hate to call it this, but a skill set to manage through some of these troubling times. Um, And society's changed a lot, obviously, since you were younger, and even when I was younger, it's significantly different. My cousin was the president of the LGBTA Society at Virginia Tech, so I got to experience that community when I was in college because my cousin, that was my closest cousin,
Mhm.
um, and even that I know is significantly different than a few decades before. Um, Going through those challenges and working with professionals in that, are there any specific skills or anything that you feel has really, given you the ability to handle challenges better today? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think there's several challenges. I think one of them is resilience and
Yeah,
the belief really that that transformation is possible,
yeah,
and that even in our darkest periods of time, if we can remember those things, we
yeah,
can always see the light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah,
And uh, I've remade myself a number of times throughout life,
yeah,
and we can, as long as we have our health, we can always continue to remake ourselves.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and so and I think the other lessons learned on that, and particularly in conjunction with real estate, is the reason that the that 2008 was such a
yeah,
huge challenge for me is
yeah,
because I was overleveraged, and I mean,
mm,
I still use leverage
yeah,
in real estate. Who doesn't? But am I limit that considerably and realize that, yeah, leverage is tremendous, and as long as the economy is going up, you can over leverage all you want, but you
mm,
never know
yeah,
when that
yeah,
crash is going to come. And there's one thing that is certain: it
yeah,
always is going to turn. And so I
yeah.
just do not over leverage anymore.
Yeah. That's a great point. Just published actually a podcast on the 24th of September, which is actually they were recording here, and I talked about the real estate cycles in a recent webinar that I just did. If you haven't, go back and listen to that episode from a few weeks ago. And to your point, Alan, real estate goes in cycles, and in a curvilinear world, I think a lot of people don't realize, as humans, we see things linearly. So,
Hmm.
we're not able to zoom out, whether it's climate cycles or financial cycles or societal cycles. These things they tend to rhyme, if not repeat themselves
Hmm.
perfectly.
Right.
And I think specifically, as you mentioned with real estate, if you understand that real estate can go up and can go down, then you can, like you said, take appropriate measures, not over leverage, and do that.
Right.
Um, I saw when I was in my early teens, I saw my parents both lose their jobs. They were
Hmm.
working for Jimmy Dean Construction back,
Hmm.
which Jimmy Dean Sausage, which you and I remember. Not everybody that listens will remember that, but Jimmy Dean Sausage. Jimmy Dean also had a construction company, JD
Hmm.
Construction. Both my parents were working for him in the early '90s. Savings and loan crisis happened. They both lost their jobs, and I'll
Hmm.
never forget that. As you mentioned, that experience of sitting around the TV. I remember sitting there, in our dining room and just, remembering, the stress that my family was going through at the time.
Yeah.
And then obviously seeing 2008 again. So, you kind of learn those lessons. And if you're listening today, that's the reason that Al and I are talking about this is so that you aren't doomed to repeat the same mistakes
Right.
that have been made. Before we kind of turn like deeply into the real estate side, Alan, just kind of, talking about the importance of resiliency. I've thought a lot about this. I think, um, if you don't have your personal house in order, it's hard to have a really stable financial house, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
and I think this is, we talk a lot about
Hmm.
finances on this podcast and real estate and alternative investments, but my coaching clients know the first thing we talk about is our health, whether it's your physical health or your mental health. If there's something that you haven't addressed in in your world, in your personal life, then you're kind of glossing over or just trying to sugarcoat things with money. And I think there's a big problem in our society in that, like you mentioned, it's like we're
Hmm.
we're chasing wealth, we're chasing retirement, And I always ask people that say, "Hey, I want to retire earlier. I want to," like I said, "Well, what is your plan? Like, what are you going to do?" Because I think we're all drawn towards something that gives us more significance. And,
Mhm.
being productive is important, being accessible is important, being connected is important, I think, which is a huge thing. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think my story illustrates that, and maybe
Yeah,
I didn't emphasize that maybe as much as I would have
yeah,
liked to when I was relating that story.
yeah,
But I've been posting for almost 4 years now, and
yeah,
uh, the label of my show has been Real Estate Investing Abundance, and
yeah.
I recently have made the change to Streams to Impact, and and certainly there is a lot behind that title switch,
Yeah.
and one of the main reasons that I'm shifting the label on that is because I'm really shifting the focus of that from strictly wealth development through real estate to really being a show that is there to help people to develop and grow as people as individuals,
I
and
love that.
because
Yeah,
I think it is absolutely like my story illustrates. If I had not gone into counseling, if I had not
yeah,
gotten my own personal self together, I'd still be out there struggling, no matter
yeah,
what kind of financial opportunities may have come my way. I would have screwed them up.
yeah,
And You've got to get your house in order.
yeah,
I mean, there are people out there who find their niche in financial development, and they're terrible, horrible people. Uh, but uh, but
yes,
they found their niche, and they're not happy. And
yeah,
I mean, what's the point in having
exactly.
wealth without having really personal prosperity?
Yeah,
And so, Streams to Impact is about developing multiple streams of income,
yeah,
not for the money, but for making a positive and meaningful impact
yeah.
in life.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think, look, that is like we were saying earlier, like that's the most important thing. Like, what is your why? Simon
Yeah.
Sinek says, like, what's your deep why? And I think when you've overcome challenges, I related this in a story, kind of talking about my sister. Like when you face deep emotional challenges, going out, got to race bicycles. That physical pain isn't as much when you've gone through challenges and come out the other side. You know, like the crash of 2008, 09, 2010. And you're like, hey, you know what? This The world didn't come to an end. We're still here. You
Mhm.
take some lessons away and you move on from that. And I think I was in the optimist club when I was younger, and I still would call myself an optimist, whether it comes to, you know, the political landscape today or politics or the finances of the country. I think that we're going to figure our way out of it. And I hope that, shows like this can help contribute to that and help
Yeah.
increase people's optimism. But when it comes to real estate, let's talk about kind of our respective businesses here. Alan, I know you guys just closed on a pretty big deal over in Tennessee. I was just in Nashville last week. So I would love to hear kind of you mentioned a couple things like with respect to leverage. I know we've talked about this several times, but I think one thing that I remember when I was working in the sales space and I'd train reps, I'd tell them, I'd say, hey, if you talk to a customer, don't it's okay to repeat yourself because as humans we need to hear things that you could probably tell this better than me with your education and your professional background, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to hear things about 7 times before it becomes common
Mhm.
knowledge. So I would love to kind of go through some of the things that you learned from the residential space and 2008, the great financial crisis, and why you now focus on multifamily real estate. You mentioned the scalability, you mentioned the lower risk, um, you mentioned working together as a team. Anything else that you can add to that, and kind of what types of specific commercial projects are you focusing on now and why?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of allure out there to invest
Yeah,
in single family properties. I mean,
yeah,
uh, the home television program. What's the name of it? I mean,
Well, there's
they
the
collect.
flipping programs, and
Yeah,
there's
they,
the oh
yeah,
yeah, tiny homes, and there's all these little yeah,
yeah, and they just really glamorize
yeah,
that process.
yeah,
And well, I mean, to be honest, I really did enjoy buying a shack and turning it into a castle. I mean, there's lots
yeah,
of, it feels good, it feels wonderful, and I've got terrific photographs of before and after, and it's enjoyable, and I can see certainly the allure in that. And yeah, you can develop wealth that way, but it's not passive, and
yeah,
and it takes a lot of and
yeah,
a lot of hands-on involvement there.
yeah,
And and when I first started out, I mean, I was doing everything from the plumbing, the electrical, the sheetrock, painting. So I learned a lot of skills,
yeah,
and those are good skills to have. I don't necessarily apply them anymore, but anyway, it was a fun process, and
yeah,
I enjoyed it. What I think that I mean, I didn't realize the significant risk. I mean,
yeah,
when
yeah,
you're going out there and putting your capital into a single family home,
hmm,
uh, that's huge risk,
yeah,
and I was bearing that whole
mm,
risk really
mm,
essentially on my own shoulders there,
yeah,
and the margins are much more minimal
yeah.
than what most people realize. And it really took
Well,
2000. Go ahead.
yeah, on that note, I apologize, but just to underscore that, Alan, I think, one, I think it's great. I grew up swinging hammers and shoveling shingles and laying wood floors with my stepfather. I think understanding, that side
Mhm,
of real estate is important. But what you just said, I think a lot of smaller investors don't understand the risk or the actual returns either, because when they look at a property, and I've heard this, I said, I'll talk to an investor like, I'm getting a 30% cash return
mhm,
on my property. And I said, okay, who's managing it? They go, well, I'm managing it. I said,
mhm,
okay, so you're managing the property, so you're not paying a management fee. What's your vacancy? Oh, well, I don't have, I've not had any vacancy, so they're not accounting for, you know, future vacancy, setting aside that. What about maintenance? Oh, it's a newer property. I haven't had any maintenance.
mhm,
Okay. Are you setting aside reserves for maintenance? So, you set aside, management fee, which you should either pay yourself or pay a company. You set aside vacancy, you set aside maintenance, all those reserves. You're looking at 20 to 30% of your gross revenue
mhm,
that's coming in. And, it takes that 30% return that I was talking about. And in that specific example, it dropped it into the single digits for that
mhm,
specific investor. And I said, hey, if you take an apples to apples comparison, compare that to a professionally managed apartment building. And then I also said, if you have one vacancy or one issue with the house,
mhm.
that wipes out potentially all of your income. Significant risk. Are you a high income business owner or professional earning two, 300,000 or even more a year, but still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Are you comfortable working until you're 65 or 70 to retire? Or do you want to achieve financial independence and live life on your own terms? You could join myself and Matt Four and learn how we both became financially independent in our early 30s. We will teach you how to make, keep, and grow your money, teaching you strategies to maximize your earnings, keep your income that you've earned through tax strategy and legal structures, and ultimately teach you how to grow it by determining your personal investing strategy, as well as teach you how to analyze investments so you can grow your passive income to the point to live life on your own terms. Our coaching clients reliably do this in 7 years or less. To learn more, check out our coaching program at nextlevelincome.com/coaching. That's nextlevelincome.com/coaching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, I appreciate you pointing that,
Yeah.
because I mean that was exactly what
Yeah.
happened to me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, well, look at all the tax advantages I'm getting, which were tremendous. Look at
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
steady income that is coming in,
Yeah.
and you see all of those things,
Yeah.
and and I and so many people who are investing in single family real estate do not do exactly what you
Mhm.
just did there. We
Yeah.
are not paying ourselves a salary, which we
Yeah.
should if we're self-managing. We're not taking into consideration what's going to happen if there is a vacancy. Uh, and how long is that vacancy going to be?
Hmm.
What are the costs of bringing that unit up to rentability once
Hmm.
it is vacant? Uh, and what's going to happen if there is a major expense? I mean, roofs have to be replaced every, 7, 10 years or so.
Hmm.
And one of the problems that I ran into, I mean, as long as I had a good income and I was employed,
Yeah.
I could absorb all of
Yeah.
and and not really feel the risk that was involved in there. Once
Yeah.
I didn't have my job, and uh, and one of my properties built in the 1970s, the sewer fails, and
Ooh,
uh,
yeah.
and uh, where's that money coming from? Suddenly, I didn't
Hmm.
have my professional income to absorb all of that,
Yeah.
uh, and and that's the problem with single family
Yeah.
investing, and almost everybody I talk to is in a predicament.
Yeah.
Those people who are successful in single family and have scaled up to 50, 60, 70, 100 units, they're not that's not passive income. There's no way
No.
that
Yeah.
that is passive income.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
working hard
Yeah.
and long hours to
Yeah.
develop that portfolio.
Oh, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah. So now multifamily is a big focus. What types of multifamily projects are you all focused on? I know the one you guys just closed on recently was in Tennessee. Is there a specific asset class within that space that you focus on?
generally speaking, the the partners that I work with, and I work with a number of different partners, but we're looking uh, for properties that we can bring immediate appreciation to. The
Yeah.
the ideal property is a property that is basically in physically good shape,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
there are managed issues. It's much
Yeah.
easier to correct management issues than it is to go in and do a full blown renovation. Uh, but
Especially in today's market when rent increases are lower and repair costs are higher, your
right,
return on investment is
yeah,
not what it was 10 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can go in and we can straighten out management issues within,
Yeah.
2 to 3 months, and we can then start generating cash flow much sooner than if we have to go in and do a renovation that is to take 6 to 12 months before we're able to turn that around and start having cash flow on those. We do both of those. And well, I mean, what we are really looking for is the rate of return and how soon it is that we can bring cash flow to our passive investors.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not going to go into a project unless we are really confident that we can return at a minimum 18% return
Yeah.
on annual average rate of return
Yeah.
with a holding period of five average of 5 years.
Yeah.
If we can turn that around within 2 to 3 years, fantastic. But we will
Yeah.
never underwrite for a 2 to 3 year
Yeah.
project there. So
Yeah. I like
does
that.
that answer questions there?
Yeah, no, I think that's terrific. And I think a lot of the specifically the mobile home projects that we've been working on here recently are very similar. Like we're
Mhm.
looking at finding mom and pop operated parks. Like we have a 10 park portfolio that we're in process of acquiring right now. And a single owner, not a professional. He acquired all these parks. Actually, he had 11. We're buying 10 out of the 11. And he his rents are we're talking like $400 a month rents. They're $100 to $150 below market. So those are operations to your point and
Mhm.
Those operational efficiencies are a lot easier to address than going through and, replacing or filling, say, 50% of the lots and doing that.
Yeah.
So I think in today's market specifically, that's really important. The other thing that you mentioned earlier, I want to circle back on, our leverage on that specific deal is about 60, it's actually 62%, just shy of that. What types of loans are you looking at, Alan, today, and kind of what types of leverage are you looking at in terms of LTV?
The This last project
Yeah,
was a 70/30,
yeah,
and it was institutional finance.
yeah,
A
terrific.
lot of it uh, through Fannie Mae,
Yep,
and the partners I work with have excellent track records, and
yeah,
so we can get
yeah,
those institutional loans that tend to have the best interest rates on them.
yeah,
And the and their bridge loans have been difficult. There was a property that we were uh, working with one of our partners on, and they did have a 2-year bridge loan on it. So
yeah.
those are still out there.
Oh yeah,
Um, we ultimately passed on that. It was just more risky than we wanted to go into this
yeah,
environment. Uh, Even though, I mean, we even knew at the time that the projections were that interest rates were going down. It still just was 2-year time frame is
yeah,
just awfully risky there.
yeah,
Um, so the so I mean, those of course are the ideal loans out there, but there are it depends on the size of the project and what we're looking at. Credit unions are a wonderful place to go if a local credit union are excellent to work with and generally have pretty good terms as well. And if you can find a local bank, if there is such thing anymore,
yeah,
they're always nice to work with as well.
yeah.
So
No, absolutely. Some of our smaller projects, our car washes, those sorts of things, we've had really good success with local credit unions and doing that. And yeah, they love it because they want to participate in the community, and the terms tend to be better. So yeah, if you're getting started, if you have smaller deals, don't overlook credit unions for sure. As we wrap up here, Alan, if you do one more time, share a couple things. I know you got some great resources on your website. Also want to hear a little bit about your podcast, which I'm fortunate enough to be joining you here again shortly. So maybe you could share the best way for the audience not only to get a hold of you, but also get access to those resources that you have.
yeah, so there's there's really three free resources. One
Yeah,
is the podcast, Streams to Impact, and you can find that on all of the podcast streaming sources. Um, and um, and it's also on YouTube. So just for Streams to Impact, and you should be able to find that. And we broadcast once a week, so 4 to 5 shows per month. And then the other free thing is that we have the free training video on passive investing, and they can find that at steedtalker.com /passive. That's like the horse, STEED, and talker like I'm doing now, TALKER.com /passive.
we'll
And
have that right
that's
down here in the show notes too.
okay.
Yeah,
And so that's a free resource, a good
wonderful.
training video. And at the site, they can also schedule a free consultation, and giving the time and effort that I put into those, the consultation is worth hundreds of dollars, but we're offering it to complimentary, and it being the value that it is, I don't know how much longer we can continue to offer it for free, but in that we will take some time to help those in the consultation to very mindfully examine their values and examine what their highest vision is, and are those values supporting the vision, and we'll take a look at the challenges that are in the way of attaining that vision, and we'll end up with a blueprint as to how to proceed forward. And of course, I'm going to offer them, if there's compatibility and I feel like they're a fit for us, we'll offer them the opportunity to join our Streams to Impact Prosperity program. And if they're interested in it, well and good. If not, we will depart as friends, and they will do with a blueprint for their future. So all of that can be found at stevetucker.com/save.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much. It's always good to see you. Always good chatting with you here. We're practically neighbors right down the road here in Western North Carolina. Very fortunate for both of us to live in one of the most beautiful areas, in my opinion, of the world. Dr. Lomax, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your wisdom, your background, and all of the things that we talked about today with our audience.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.